They walked into that hearing room thinking it was just another day of pushing their talking points. They had no idea Jasmine Crockett was about to expose every single one of their lies with actual facts and receipts. What happened next became a 4-part masterclass in how to dismantle political propaganda in real time. Stay with me until the end because you're going to see exactly how one prepared congresswoman destroyed an entire party's narrative with nothing but truth and intelligence. And make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because moments like these don't happen every day. The House Oversight Committee hearing room was more packed than usual that morning, strange for what was officially labeled as just a routine oversight session. But people who'd been paying attention knew this wasn't going to be routine at all. Speaker Jim Jordan had scheduled this hearing supposedly to review federal law enforcement practices. That's what it said on paper anyway. But everyone who knew how these things work understood the real agenda. This was a platform for Republicans to complain about Trump's legal problems, attack aid to Ukraine, and bring up whatever culture war topics were playing well with their base that week. Political theater disguised as serious congressional work. They'd done this same routine dozens of times before. Same playbook, same talking points, same manufactured outrage. What they didn't realize was that Jasmine Crockett had come ready to turn their theater into her courtroom, and she had the receipts to back it up. But before we get into how she systematically demolished 4 separate Republican arguments in one hearing, I need you to understand something. This wasn't luck. This wasn't her just being good at comebacks. This was preparation meeting opportunity. She'd done her homework. She knew the facts. She had the legal background, and most importantly, she wasn't afraid to use all of it. So stay locked in, because what you're about to see is a blueprint for how to handle bad faith arguments with facts and intelligence. The first explosion came about 40 minutes into the hearing. A Republican congressman from Ohio, one of Jordan's reliable allies, had just finished a long rambling statement about Trump's conviction in New York. He hit every single talking point they'd been using for weeks. Alvin Bragg is a partisan prosecutor, the charges were unprecedented, the whole thing was election interference disguised as justice. It was the kind of statement that usually goes unchallenged in these hearings because most members either don't want to get into the details or don't have the legal background to effectively counter it. Jasmine Crockett had both the willingness and the expertise, and she was about to show everyone exactly what happens when propaganda meets preparation. When she got recognized to speak, she didn't start by arguing against him. She started with a question, a simple question that seemed almost innocent. "Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make sure I understand my colleague's argument correctly. Congressman, you said Congress should investigate and potentially overturn President Trump's conviction. Can you tell me which branch of government prosecutes criminal cases?" The congressman looked slightly annoyed, like he was being asked to explain something obvious. "Well, the executive branch, through prosecutors." "Correct," Crockett interrupted smoothly, "the executive branch. And which branch tries those cases and gives verdicts?" "The judicial branch." "The judicial branch," Crockett repeated, not letting him add any qualifications. "And which branch of government do we serve in, Congressman?" You could literally see it on his face, the moment he realized where this was going, but he was already committed. "The legislative branch." "The legislative branch," Crockett confirmed. Her tone shifted. She sounded like a law professor walking a student through a basic logic problem. "So, just to be absolutely clear, the executive branch brought the charges, the judicial branch tried the case, and you're suggesting that the legislative branch, our branch, should somehow step in and overturn a verdict that was given by a jury in a state court? Is that your actual position?" The congressman tried to recover. "I'm saying Congress has oversight authority over federal agencies." "Yes," Crockett jumped in immediately, "but Donald Trump was prosecuted by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. That's a state office. And he was tried in New York State Court. That's a state court. So explain to me, and I'm genuinely asking this because I'm a lawyer and I must have missed this part in law school, explain to me how Congress has jurisdiction to overturn a state criminal conviction." The silence in that room was absolutely profound. The congressman was visibly struggling, looking to his staff for help. But there was no good answer, because the question exposed the fundamental absurdity of what Republicans were actually proposing. Well, we have a responsibility to ensure justice. We have a responsibility to respect separation of powers, Crockett fired back, her voice sharp now. We have a responsibility to understand basic civics, and we have a responsibility not to undermine the judicial system just because we don't like a particular verdict. And here's where it gets really good, because she wasn't done. She'd set the trap. Now she was going to spring it completely. Let me walk you through what actually happened in that case, because I think it's important for the record. Donald Trump was indicted by a grand jury. That's a group of regular citizens who reviewed the evidence and found probable cause. He was arraigned. He entered a plea. He had lawyers, multiple expensive, high-priced lawyers. He went through discovery. He had opportunities to file motions. The case went to trial before a jury. 12 citizens randomly selected through the standard jury selection process. Both sides presented their evidence. Both sides examined and cross-examined witnesses. The jury deliberated, and they returned a verdict of guilty on 34 counts. 34, unanimous on every single count. With each step she described, the legal soundness of the process became more and more undeniable. Now, Congressman, at which point in that entire process did the justice system fail? Was it when citizens on the grand jury found probable cause? Was it when 12 different citizens unanimously agreed he was guilty? Was it when the judge, a properly appointed member of the judiciary, oversaw the proceedings according to established legal rules? Tell me exactly where the breakdown in due process occurred. The congressman had no answer, because any answer he gave would basically be admitting that the breakdown was simply that Trump was held accountable. He tried to pivot, started talking about the judge's political contributions or the prosecutor's campaign promises, but Crockett wasn't letting him escape. Those are political arguments, not legal ones. You're asking Congress to intervene in a state criminal conviction because you don't like the politics of the people involved. That's not oversight. That's not justice. That's an authoritarian impulse dressed up in congressional procedure. Then she delivered her knockout line while looking directly at the cameras. If we start overturning jury verdicts because Congress doesn't like the outcome, we don't have a justice system anymore. We have rule by legislative whim. And I guarantee you, the next time a Democrat in Congress suggests we should overturn a verdict you like, you'll suddenly remember why separation of powers matters. One argument down, 3 to go. And trust me, it only gets better from here. Keep watching, because the next takedown involves Russian propaganda, and it's absolutely devastating. The second demolition came later in the same hearing. A congresswoman from Georgia had been going on for several minutes about why the United States shouldn't be funding Ukraine's defense. Standard talking points. Taxpayer money should be spent at home. We can't afford to be the world's police. Questions about where the aid is really going. The usual isolationist arguments that had become popular in Republican circles. But then she made a specific claim that made several people in the room look up from their phones. And we've seen reports, she said, her tone suggesting this was damning evidence, that U.S. weapons we've sent to Ukraine have ended up in the hands of Hamas terrorists. We're literally arming the people who attacked Israel on October 7th. That's where your tax dollars are going. Jasmine Crockett's hands shot up immediately. Speaker Jordan, probably realizing that ignoring her would look worse than recognizing her, gave her the floor. I thank the speaker for recognizing me, because I think we need to address what my colleague just said very directly. Congresswoman, you mentioned reports that U.S. weapons sent to Ukraine ended up with Hamas. Can you cite the source for that claim? The Georgia representative pulled out her phone. Clearly, she'd been prepared for this question. There have been multiple reports from credible sources. Can you name one? Crockett pressed. Just one credible source that has confirmed U.S. weapons from Ukraine ended up with Hamas. The congresswoman looked at her notes. I believe I saw reporting from... Actually, I'll submit the articles for the record. Please do, Crockett said, her tone making it crystal clear she knew exactly what was coming. Because I've done some research on this claim, and what I found was fascinating. This story originated from Russian state media and Russian-aligned social media accounts. It was then picked up by some fringe websites and eventually made its way into Republican talking points. But every single serious news organization that investigated it, concluded it was false. The weapon systems we've sent to Ukraine are being tracked. There's no evidence any have ended up with Hamas. She pulled up something on her tablet, reading directly from what appeared to be a fact check. U.S. defense officials, Israeli intelligence, and multiple independent verification organizations have all stated clearly there is no evidence of U.S. weapons from Ukraine reaching Hamas. This is Russian disinformation designed to undermine Western support for Ukraine. The Georgia congresswoman tried to object. I'm just raising questions that my constituents. Your constituents are hearing Russian propaganda, Crockett cut her off bluntly, and you're amplifying it. In fact, Congresswoman, let me show you something interesting. She held up a printout of a tweet. This is from your account posted 3 weeks ago. You quote-tweeted something from Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president, currently deputy chairman of Putin's Security Council. You shared his message about NATO expansion in Ukraine. Do you remember that tweet? The room went dead silent. The Georgia